Morning. I'd love to tell you a little bit about our speaker. We are in for a treat today from an individual who is an authority in this area. Leon Russell is the chair of the NAACP Board of Directors, and he has dedicated his life to fighting for human rights, has served on the National Board of Directors since 1990 in various roles, including Assistant Secretary, Chair of the Convention Planning Committee, and Vice Chair. His peers recognized his decades of work and leadership when they elected him in 2000 as chair in 2017. Before joining the board, Russell served as president of the NAACP Florida State Conference of Branches for 4 years, after serving for 15 years as the very first vice president. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Russell to the stage. He has asked that he's made the request that we'd like this to be a very interactive session. So as you have questions or comments, please find a mic or raise your hand and we will bring the mic to you. And thank you for your kind attention and you're welcome to the stage.
If you see that as a people, our history is being erased and changed, we see massacres that occurred in this country that were indeed race massacres perpetrated by white folk against black folk. And we're being told that, for instance, Tulsa, 1921, we're being told that it was the black folks who initiated the violence. You know, the black folks who were in their houses being bombed, literally, burned out. So the question is, who are we? What kind of servants are we? And as you think about that, the question becomes, what is our role? What can our roles be? Roles can be varied. At the NAACP, we believe that we have to be advocates. We have to be the voice. We have to be a voice in a community, in a state, in a country, in a world, on behalf of those who can't or won't speak for themselves. We have to be advocates. We have to speak up, and we have to talk about the issues that negatively impact our communities and our people. So, let me take a little survey. Where are you from? Let's go around the room. Right here. Where do you live? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Where do you live?
Baltimore, Maryland.
Baltimore. Yes, sir. New York. New York. Where in New York? That's a big state.
Queens.
The Queens.
From Gary,
Originally from Gary. Yes, ma'am. Right here by the post. Where do you live? Yes. You live here in Maryland. Yes, ma'am. Upper Marlboro. College Park. Yes, ma'am. United Kingdom. Okay, all righty. Dallas, Texas. Okay, we got a good smattering here. Yes, sir. Bowie. At the moment. What does that mean? You getting ready to come to Florida? Okay. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Ferndale. Baltimore. Dearborn. Okay. Oh. Osceola County. Houston. Grand Rapids. New Jersey. Okay. Let's go up here to this first table. College Park? New York? Okay, Dallas. So let me begin with my friend from Houston. Who is from Houston? Okay, so in Florida, oh, I forgot, I left out I left out this table. I'm sorry. Seattle? Kansas City. Kansas or Missouri? We have to make that distinction. We do have to make the distinction. Okay. So we're dealing with a bunch of educational issues in Florida, dealing with repression of what kids can read, what's in libraries. They say the law didn't say ban the book, but we've seen thousands of books removed from libraries. We call that banning. The issue is that we've had thousands of books removed from libraries based on complaints from two people, two individuals, because the law is so convoluted that anybody can walk into any school and demand that books be removed. Now, why is Florida a microcosm of what's going on nationwide? Houston. We got Harris County, Texas. We have a legislature in Florida that has decided that it will involve itself in a number of things. They have not yet done what the Texas legislature has done in Texas to Houston and Harris County, which is to specifically say, we're going to come into your county, we're going to take over your schools, we're going to pass a law. It didn't say Harris County. It said counties with a population of X millions of people and there's only one in the state. Why do we have a problem with that? Because Houston has become a majority-minority community. The similarity to what's going on in Florida is the basic reason for why these things are happening. There are a group of people in this country who, because of the demographic change that is occurring, that is, that the growth of minority populations is such that in 30 years, there will be no majority group that dominates the population. People are threatened by that because for them, it's all about the power. It's all about the power. And so what we see happening in Florida is that we see a group of people led by a governor who has determined that he is a monarch and that he has the ability to do things by fiat, by his own determination, not through law or going to the people to ask what they want. What we see with our governor, and through him, our legislature and our state courts in some instances, is an effort to roll back the clock because they perceive that they are being replaced, that they are being displaced by people who are black and brown, who do not represent what they believe is the rightful authority. And so part of what you've been dealing with is this whole question of Christian nationalism. What that means to me, in the way that I define Christian nationalism, because when I told that story this morning, it seems to me that the parable talks about what Christ would do. And that's, for my definition of being a Christian, it means being Christ-like. And from all that I have read, when Christ saw something, he stopped and he handled it. He took care of it. He helped. And so the question for us, I believe, as a people is, when we see this kind of thing, when we see people trying to take us back to a condition where we are considered property, where we are being denied basic rights, when we're being denied the ability to participate in our own governance, to me that says that we are that man laying by the side of the road. And so the question is, who's going to come along and be the Samaritan? Who's going to help us? Reality says we have to help ourselves. That we have to be a part of the solution. We can't be silent. We have to use whatever power we have to make the changes that are necessary for all of us to thrive as a people and as a nation. And at the very core, we have to be prepared to understand that that means we all, no matter where we are, no matter who we are, no matter what our zip code, no matter what group we belong to or somebody assigns us to, that we are all human beings and we are all in the same boat. Might have come over on different ships at different times. We're all in the same boat now. And the question is, will we allow this ship to sink? Because that's what's threatened here. In Florida, as we see our legislature pass laws, the question becomes, how do they have what gives them the power to pass these laws in the fashion that they do? And quite frankly, it's the way that the political system is set up at the current time. Now, we'll talk in another session about redistricting and why it's important. But the issue for us here is that we have to clearly understand that we have a tool that can make a difference. That tool is our vote. And we have to decide as groups across the country that we are going to marshal our power and use it, number one, to protect the gains that we've made over the last 100 years, and that further, we're not just going to stop at what we've done, that we have a mission to advance the cause of civil rights, human rights, and freedom and democracy to all people. That we have to ensure that the fruits of government can be shared equitably among all of the people who live here, whether they got here yesterday or whether you've been here for the last 400 years in terms of your family lineage. The issue is we have to stop otherizing people, because that's what's happening in Florida. Different groups are being picked at different times to otherize. It's black people today, it's women tomorrow, and let me deal with this issue for a moment. I need us to understand this thing about the otherization of women, because sometimes I don't think we quite get it. Black folk weren't the only people who were considered property when this nation was formed. Women were considered property. They were owned by their husbands. Look at the laws. Look at the laws that were in place when this country was founded. Up until about 1960, when the laws began to change, a woman couldn't buy a house. A woman couldn't get a credit card, get credit. She had to have the approval of a man. She had to have the authority of a man to do that. We're seeing an effort, in my opinion, to roll the clock back, to deny the humanity of people and groups of people. The basic rights of people are threatened. And so we have to start thinking about what we do to turn this situation around. From the NAACP standpoint, and that's who I represent, it's about the power that each of us has individually to make the difference, but it's also about our responsibility, if you will, to be disciples of democracy. Let me repeat that. We have a responsibility to be disciples of democracy. We have to explain to people that when we say government of the people, by the people, for the people, that's about us. It's on us to make sure that people understand, because too often I will hear people say, well, what they're doing in government doesn't affect me. Wait till Saturday. If they shut down the government and your Social Security check don't come next week, that's a problem. You go to the doctor and there's an issue with your Medicare or Medicaid, that's a problem, right? And so it's does government impact your life? Student, are you a student? Got a student loan? Yet? What happens when you get a student loan and that student loan over the next 30 years keeps following you because government has created a system that you can't ever pay it off? Okay? Would student debt relief impact your life or somebody you know? It's a simple question. If you live in any community in this country and you're worried about going to the grocery store because somebody with an assault rifle might come up in that store, whether it's a Dollar General in Jacksonville, whether you're in Buffalo, whether you're in El Paso, no matter where you are, if you worry about the safety of your children? What can you do about that? Well, if you've got folks who sit in places of power but refuse to take action in terms of reasonable gun reform. I know all of y'all got a pistol under your pillow. I understand. I see that. But nobody needs a weapon of war that literally obliterates a child's body, makes them unrecognizable. And see, we're not anymore talking about the unusual. We're talking about incidents that happen regularly and routinely. And you tell me that you don't vote because your vote doesn't make a difference. Because what government does doesn't impact your life. Well, the question becomes, have you thought about your life? Have you thought about your community? And do you recognize what the impact of that is? Do you understand that if you're having problems with how your police force enforces the law in your community, have you thought about the fact that you didn't vote last time for the mayor who appointed the police chief, who sets the standard for how their officers enforce the law in your community? Have you thought about that? Have you translated that to the folks in your family, the folks in your community, in your neighborhood? Do you talk about it? Do you tell them that they, through their vote, have a Samaritan's responsibility to take care of their communities? Trying to help us to understand that this is not, I could talk about bad things in Florida all day long. We could talk about the impact that bad government has on the lives of people all day long. I could go around and I could say in the state of Maryland how those policies impact your lives. I could say to you in the state of Maryland, yes, y'all elected a black governor. I saw somebody stick a microphone in his face yesterday and say, Governor, what are you going to do about this problem of criminals not being held long enough to get out and they repeat their crimes? Governors don't enact laws. They sign laws that are enacted by legislators that you elect. So if you want a law that deals equitably with this issue of recidivism, then you need to be electing people to the legislature. You need to be telling those people who are in the legislature what you expect as citizens to land on the governor's desk so that he can deal with the issue. Because thank goodness, I don't think your governor believes that he's a king and can rule by fiat. Okay? So you got to think about that. If you are in the state of Michigan, thinking about the history of Michigan over the last 5 years, 6 years, okay? You had a crisis in Flint, okay? A crisis that was created aided and abetted by those who were in control, from the governor on down. Now let's analyze for a minute. Dearborn, okay? The water from Flint that folks in Flint drank came from the Detroit system. It was pure water. The governor and his cronies decided that that was enriching the city of Detroit for them to supply water. So they said, no, no, no. Flint is going to have to get its water from this river right here that everybody knew was contaminated with lead. Now, I'm not making this up. It is the absolute, they said, we're going to change to this system. People believed in Flint. They had a black mayor. They had all this good stuff. But they didn't control the legislature, and therefore, they had not been able to send the appropriate legislation to take care of the issue. But they also had a governor who was kind of crazy. I'm just saying. My opinion. My opinion. But in Michigan, people finally woke up last year and decided we can make a change here. And they flipped the legislature. They flipped control of the legislature. They got up, they got out, and they voted without respect to all of the efforts that were made to keep them from getting up and going out and voting. And they changed the system. They changed the system. Now, will it be a change overnight? No. But it's a change in the right direction. It's a change away from the concentration of power in a few elites to making sure that the voices of the people were heard and that those directives were carried out by the governments at the local level. Michigan is an exemplar of what we need all of us to think about, which is that when we use the vote that we have, the vote that our forefathers and mothers bled, died, marched, protested, demanded, when we use that vote, we can make a difference. Now, there's another thing about the Samaritan that I need you to understand in my interpretation of the story. As I said, disciples of democracy. Some of the people who are sitting in this room, let me go here, because some folks have decided that other folks, that we don't have the ability to represent ourselves. And that's crazy. We need to understand that some of us in this room need to be sitting on school boards. We need to be sitting on city councils. We need to run for the state legislature. We need to be representing our communities. You know how it is. Other folks come to our communities and they tell us how they gonna make it better for us. Who knows better what your community needs than you? Well, I don't always speak the King's English the way that it should be spoken. Well, I've listened to a lot of the people that you send to legislatures, and I don't think they ever went to that school. Okay? Some people who think that they are smarter than you are really dumb as a rock. They have no clue but they allow themselves to be directed not by the needs of the people, but by the perception that they will have a little power and they may get a little money. So what I need is for us to become the Samaritan. The Samaritan is not just a helper who's passing through. The Samaritan is the person who decides to get engaged, who decides to involve him or herself in what's going on. The Samaritan is that person who decides that I can be that disciple of democracy. I can tell folks why they need to get out and vote. I can explain to them what happens when they don't vote. You get Florida. You get a man who tells you that being woke is a problem. Now, somewhere else in that book, I heard somebody say, awake, awake, ye who are sleeping. Because if you dead, whether you know it or not, anything can happen to you. Awake. Be woke. We have this anti-woke law. Now, what does that particularly mean? Nobody knows. It's a weapon. It's a tool to be used when we don't like who you are or what we perceive you to represent. And we have to understand that in the black community, I'm always amazed because in the black community, we have to think about the fact that we are some of everybody. We are, our communities are made up of some of everybody. We want to be homophobic. Yeah, I know. And then you looked at the piano player at church. Okay. We say we can't be anti-Semites. But I had a black rabbi. I saw a black rabbi last week present a prayer at one of the largest national meetings in the country of leaders. Black female rabbi. So we can't be anti-Semites because we Jewish too. We represent, if you go down the line and we represent a little bit of everything that there is in this country. And so the issue for me is don't let your state, don't let your community repeat what is going on in Florida. I don't need to repeat all of the bad stuff. You see it on the TV every day. I've got a governor running around wanting to be president of the United States. Talking about he signed a 6-week abortion ban. But don't tell you that he signed it after midnight in a room in the dark with 3 or 4 folk, old men, old white men in the room. Which means that he wants to be able to tell a woman how to take care of her own health. And let's think about that for a minute. Let's think about that for a minute. So it amazes me when I think about the statistic that giving birth is the most dangerous thing that a black woman can do. And that's not hyperbole. The most dangerous thing that a black woman can do is to give birth. And so we want to be able to control, and in most instances, control means to deny appropriate health care to women in this country. That's what we want to do in Florida, according to my governor. It's coming to your state. You don't have to be in Texas. It's happened in Michigan. It's not a southern thing, although I give you credit. Where are my Alabama friends? Anybody in here from Alabama? Oh, okay. Nobody in here from Alabama. I can talk about y'all's crazy legislature. The Supreme Court has said twice, go back, redraw those districts. You are denying black people their vote. How? I mean, what do we do about that? We have to take some people out of office. We have to start using our vote in order to change what government looks like. Yeah, she looks like a kindly grandmother, the governor of Alabama. But I'm old enough to remember the grandmother screaming epithets as the children got on the bus just to get an education. Okay? You must be disciples of democracy. You have to be Samaritans of social justice. You have to be the conscious. This convening is about conscience and justice. You have to make that real. We have to be the conscience in our community. We have to speak up. I know that we're all concerned about what happens in the afterlife, but we shouldn't have to go through hell here on earth. Okay? Our children should not be destined to live in a country that wants to repeat what it did in the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. We have to be willing to be the change makers. And to me, that's what being a good Samaritan is about. It's not just doing the right thing, but it's helping others to do the right thing. So, as we go forward, that's my challenge to you. I need you to become engaged as an army in this effort. And to that end, I need you to engage others. Now, I noticed that everybody in here, because I heard them ring, I've seen you playing with them, you all got a phone. Pick them up right now. Pick up your phone. Pick up your phone. Go to your messaging, your text area. In the address area, put 20707, 20707, and in the message area, type volunteer, VOLUNTEER. Type volunteer and hit send right now. 20707. Volunteer is the message. You're going to get an answer right quick. Right quick. Now, why did I want you to do that? We are trying to organize 300,000 volunteers across the country to be disciples of democracy. We don't want you to tell folk who they need to vote for, but we need you to influence them to get up, learn the issues, and go out and vote. So I just gave you the number to our national voter volunteer effort. You can use that number to engage with others who are doing get out the vote registration efforts in your communities. If you go, and just write this one down, to vote.org, you can help people determine if they are registered to vote and what the status of their voter registration is, because even though people may have voted in the last election, what we see happening across the country is that voter rolls are being purged. And so you need to know if you are eligible to vote. You don't need to wait until the day before Election Day to determine that. So go to vote.org, and you can find out your status, and you can help folks register to vote. And I need you to think about registering people as if you got a 17-year-old in your house, in your church, you should be talking to them now so that on their 18th birthday, their first birthday gift is voter registration. You sit them down and register them to vote that day, and then you make sure that they go to the polls and they vote. So we need you to volunteer in this effort. It doesn't require you to get up and say, go vote for John Smith. No, we don't do that. But what we do insist that we do is to educate people on the issues in their community and have them understand what the positions of all the candidates who are running for office are on those issues. I guarantee you, people are not stupid. They can make their own decisions. They can make their own decisions. But you've got to be the Samaritan, the disciple who makes sure that they are prepared and that they are ready when the polls open. I leave you with this simple message. Think about this. If voting is not important, why do they work so hard to make it hard for you to vote? Okay? And that's the message I need you to take to the community. Tell your grandchildren, your nieces and nephews. Explain to them why it's important for them to engage, why they have to be a part of this system, why we insist that 300,000 people need to be talking to their friends. We need, as somebody said, each one to get one, each one to reach one. What we'd really like is each one to reach 5 or 10 or 15 or 20, depending on where you are in the community. We have to understand that somebody in government decides that you were born. You ain't born until somebody signs a birth certificate. The undertaker can't put you down until somebody signs a death certificate. All of those are government requirements. From the womb to the tomb, government is going to be involved. Will it be government by the people or will it be government of the people? Think about that. Any questions? Any questions? I talked a long time. Come on. Come on. Somebody ask a question. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask, the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, is running for president.
Oh, you said his name. Yeah, go ahead.
The polls are looking pretty decent for him. And for those of us who aren't registered Republicans and can't vote in the primaries, what would you suggest as far as working to make sure that
Well,
somebody other than him is the presidential candidate?
let me begin with the obvious. He's got to get elected. And let's start with this fact. When he jumped out there, it looked like he was about at 20% in the polls. We take a little bit of credit. Florida NAACP asked for a travel advisory in the state of Florida. We asked for that in order to raise the issues about what was going on in the state of Florida. Mr. DeSantis currently is polling at 12%. He didn't help himself the other night either. So the issue is you don't have to be a Republican. But what you need to do is be an active voter. You have to be sure that you're voting on your issues and on people who support your issues. Quite frankly, I'm not really concerned that DeSantis will be the candidate. I'm more concerned that the criminal with over 90 indictments will return. That can only be stopped if we are successful with this effort to organize and educate people about the issues that affect their lives. Because, yes, we know the devil that we face. We have to defeat the devil. And the way we do that is by getting people to the polls. If you know somebody who lives in Iowa, call them up. Talk to them. If you know somebody who lives in Vermont, call them up. Talk to them. South Carolina's a toss-up. You got a whole bunch of stuff going on in South Carolina. Let me just say this. We have to be real. People who look like us. You have to analyze where they're coming from. I cannot believe that my brother stood on the floor and declared that the Great Society, which gave us Medicare, Medicaid, and any number of other things, including the right to vote, I can't believe that the brother stood up and said living under the Great Society was worse than living in slavery. That's what he said. Y'all know who I'm talking about. There wasn't but one. It wasn't but one up there. So we have to be careful about those folks, here and here. Yes, ma'am.
Statistically, they are saying that if black and brown people vote in America, they can change the trajectory of any election, and that is the issue of us and why they're trying to stop our vote. We can garner 1/4 of the electorate. That's power.
Just to think about that statement for a minute, I want you to think about school board races, city council races, county commission races. I want you to look at the numbers of the winners and the losers in those races. We see people being elected with 100, 200 votes. Your church could make the difference in a local election. Look at the presidential election. Yes, Joe Biden won by over 7 million votes. But we have a system that's based on an electoral college process, which gives more power to a smaller population. A few votes here, a few votes there can make a difference. If we understand, and she just made my point. If we vote, we have the power to make change. Yes, ma'am.
So my question exactly follows up with that as far as I appreciate you emphasizing the down ballot elected positions and how important that is and how much those positions impact our day-to-day lives. So my question is, could you recommend some resources to help us as voters be educated voters about particularly those down ballot?
There are a couple of things that I, reading copiously and all of that good stuff. But a primary thing is I encourage every church to have forums. Bring the candidates in. Sit them down in your community. Ask them questions about what's going on in your communities. That's the first way that you can really do that. If you want other material, the League of Women Voters is out there to help you. Engage with your sororities, fraternities, all of those organizations out there. See what's going on, who's talking in the community. Bring those folks together. Quite frankly, we can educate our own communities about the issues, and we should be. That's our obligation, is to educate our own communities about the things that we need as a community. There's no book or pamphlet that's going to provide the education. You know what the deal is in your community. If it's bad water, you don't have street lights, you don't have proper sanitation, traffic is always coming through your community, you know what's going on in your community. Those are the questions that you need to raise, and those are the issues that you need to educate your community on.
Thank you. I'm glad you talked about or brought up the issue of the travel ban. Can you give us an update on that? And when we're talking about the little things that we can do, my family is in the process of planning our family reunion for 2024. And one of the suggested places is Florida. And I said to the committee, please be of mind. I will not spend a dime in Florida while this governor is in office. And I think that there are little things that we can do, that big things we might not be able to do to make a difference. But if we collectively start doing the little things, then we can see a difference coming. So what can you update us on that travel advisory?
The travel advisory, and let me be clear, because you're absolutely correct in your planning effort. The travel advisory was just that. We didn't say, don't come to Florida. I live in Florida. I got folks who work in hotels, okay? Disney is the largest employer in the state of Florida. So I ain't telling nobody, don't come, but I'm saying that, and we're saying, if you do come, particularly as an organization or a group, fraternities, sororities, religious denominations that are meeting there, and we've had all of those, then you have to address the issue. You have to talk about diversity in employment. You have to talk about diversity in government. You have to talk about the fact that black folk ought to be a part of everything that goes on. You ought to talk about all communities being represented in the workforce and in whatever is going on in that community. You got to raise that as issues. But we are saying, if you're planning something, you're thinking about it, you need to think long and hard before you make that decision to come to Florida. And when you decide that you're going somewhere else, make people aware of the problem, okay? So in Florida, the situation is this. For those organizations that had contracts to meet in 2023, we encouraged those folks, because we understand the concept, when you sign the contract, you're obligated to come and to pay. So we said, make public statements, include on your program presentations about what's going on in the state. Every fraternity that I'm aware of that's had a convention in Florida, the Shriners have had their convention in Florida, they have all spoken to this issue. They've all talked about what's going on in the state. They've made press releases and talked about the situation. For those who are planning family reunions, there's some other nice places that you can go to. Okay? You can find some places in states that are more hospitable. But let us know that your family is not coming. We don't call for a boycott, and I'm going to be really specifically why we did not. We called for a boycott of South Carolina over removal of the Confederate flag from the top of their Capitol 30 years ago. It took the massacre 30 years later at the church in Charleston before the flag actually came down. And it took that long because we were having our family reunions on the beach in South Carolina. Our fraternities and sororities were continuing to meet. Yep, Myrtle Beach, you got it right there. There you go. And it is extremely difficult to measure, to get people not to come. And so what I need us to understand is that we need to talk about what's going on if we come. We need to raise the issue, and if we decide not to come as an organization, we need to let the governor know we're not coming because of your policy. That was the original question about his standing in the poll, and this is the honest truth. I think it was the Omegas, I'm not sure, which I think they pulled their 2024 conference out of Florida, and they announced it very loudly. There's a whole bunch of those folks. That was a whole bunch of money. The business community went ape because you do have an impact. Your money has an impact no matter where you are. So you have to think about that. I think I'm nearing the end of the presentation. One more question? Yes, sir.
It's not so much a question. When I was working in the steel industry, I got a chance to be tutored by C.T. Vivian on race relations.
C.T. Vivian was one of Dr. King's biggest assistants in the civil rights movement of the 60s. And in a lot of ways, a little bit more influential
Yes.
than necessarily Dr. King.
In the steel industry, there was a lot of bias, prejudice, racism. And he had the company was trying to figure out how to get around this. I went to a 5-day seminar paid for by Inland Steel, that was the company. And at the end of the 5 days, the message that was brought forth loud and clear, you just said, you have to reach these people where their hearts are. Their hearts are in their pockets. When you reach their hearts, when the money starts to drop or change or diminish, then you reach them, you get their attention.
Yes, ma'am, I'll come back there in just a second.
Yeah, I had a question. What would be your advisement on promoting to young people that are eligible to vote to make sober-minded votes? Because young adults like myself that are at the age of voting, a lot of us don't take the time, you know?
I think you have to talk to each other. I think what I find, and one of the things that's for us at the NAACP is always hearing the voice of young people. We've got 7 young people who are by our Constitution mandated to be on our National Board of Directors. They are loud voices. They are not quiet people. They are not. They are there and they're helping us to make decisions. We have youth councils and college chapters across the country. Be a part of those things. Be a part of youth organizations that are doing things in the community and that understand the impact, and talk about that to your peers. That's how we gain the education that we have. I'm really proud. I don't know if y'all watched the congressional hearing yesterday, but look at our young folk. They don't always say nice stuff, but they say that it's not crazy stuff. They're telling the truth.
One of the things that I feel real good about, it's nice to see Adventists in here today talking about these things. I was extremely active during 1960 civil rights movement. I knew some people who were Adventists, and they would not give their name because they were afraid it would get back to the conference. They were told, no, we are not going to be a part of it. That's why it's so good to see us in here now talking about these things. Because, honey, 1960, no siree. You didn't see them. They were not allowed. But I'm glad to see that now people are speaking up, saying what's on their mind. I plan to do what I got to do because I'm a part of NEA, and I've been fussing with them for the longest. What are you going to do about Florida? So NEA has got to get on the ball. I've talked to the president of MSTA, of Maryland State Teachers Association. I said, you have a pool. We all got a pool here because if it's in Florida, why can't we think it might come to Maryland? So, and NEA is one of the largest unions in this country, and they really need to get on the ball. And I know the president of I don't know her personally, but I know the president of NEA, and I do not shut my mouth.
So I want you to understand that Becky Pringle and NEA are on the case. They have been working in Florida. We did a motorcade in Florida, and NEA supported it. So they are there. AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, is there as well. Y'all, I didn't go off on what we've done to teachers. That's a whole nother subject. That's another subject. I appreciate your attention. Thank you all for inviting me, and I look forward to seeing you at lunch.